She laughed when she said it, a joke to impress her students. "If you can solve this, I'll marry you," she teased, pointing at an impossible equation on the board. The class erupted in laughter. No one expected an answer, especially not from the janitor quietly mopping the back row. But when he stepped forward, eyes calm and confident, the room fell silent. Chalk in hand, he began to write. Line after line, the impossible started to make sense. By the time he put the marker down, no one was laughing anymore. What happens when brilliance wears the wrong uniform? For years, Marcus had worked the night shifts at the university, sweeping hallways, emptying bins, and wiping boards clean after lectures he could never afford to attend. To most, he was invisible, the man who arrived when the lights dimmed and the students left. But behind his quiet eyes was a mind hungry for numbers, patterns, and meaning. He had once dreamed of being on the other side of that classroom, chalk in hand, solving equations that shaped the world. But life had other plans. Bills came before dreams, and degrees cost more than hope could pay. Still, every night as he cleaned, he paused to study the formulas left behind. He would copy them into an old notebook, filling page after page with problems no one knew he solved in silence. That morning was supposed to be like any other. The bright young professor, Ms. Hensley, walked in, cheerful and confident, her students ready for another lecture on advanced calculus. Marcus was just there to fix a flickering light. But when she jokingly offered to marry whoever could solve her impossible equation, a challenge meant to entertain, not invite, something inside Marcus stirred. The symbols on the board weren't unfamiliar. They whispered to him, daring him to speak. For once, he didn't want to stay invisible, and when he said, "I can solve it," the laughter that followed wasn't just disbelief. It was something colder. The classroom buzzed with disbelief. A few students chuckled, others exchanged glances, waiting for the professor's reaction. Ms. Hensley smiled politely at first, thinking Marcus was joking. But the way he looked at the board, not with confusion but with calm understanding, made her uneasy. "Go ahead," she said, her tone light but testing. "Show us." Marcus stepped closer. The room seemed to shrink around him, whispers fading into silence. He picked up the marker she'd been holding, his calloused fingers trembling slightly. For a moment he hesitated. Years of being overlooked weighed on him, but then he began to write. At first it was quiet except for the squeak of the marker. Each symbol he wrote connected seamlessly with the next, like a rhythm only he could hear. The students leaned forward. Lines of calculation sprawled across the whiteboard. Neat, logical, confident. Ms. Hensley's smile began to fade. The steps looked correct, too correct. Her laughter from moments ago lingered in the air like a stain. When Marcus reached the final line, he paused, took a breath, and circled the answer. "This," he said softly, "is the solution." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then a low murmur rippled through the room. A student near the front whispered, "Wait, is that right?" Another replied, "It can't be, can it?" Ms. Hensley stepped forward, scanning the work. Her eyes darted from number to number, realization dawning with each step. He hadn't just guessed, he had solved it. Perfectly. But pride wasn't the first emotion she felt. It was discomfort, embarrassment. How could a janitor, like someone who wasn't even supposed to be in her class, have outsmarted her? Instead of acknowledgement, she found her voice sharp and defensive. "You must have memorized that from somewhere," she said. "It's a famous equation. I doubt you even understand what you just wrote." Marcus didn't argue. He simply met her gaze and said, "I understand enough." The students looked between them, between the man in the gray uniform and the professor now struggling to keep her composure. What had begun as a joke was now a mirror reflecting something uncomfortable, not about math but about how easily people are measured by their appearances. When the class ended, whispers followed Marcus out the door. Some were impressed, others mocked. But by that evening, a photo of him at the whiteboard had already made its way onto social media, captioned, "The janitor who solved the impossible." And the story was only beginning. By the next morning, the story had spread beyond the campus. Some praised Marcus as a hidden genius. Others called it a stunt, a trick. Reporters showed up at the university gates. Students whispered in hallways, some curious, others cruel. But no one was louder than the silence from the faculty. No recognition. No apology. Just a quiet decision. Marcus was to be reassigned to another building far from the lecture halls. When he arrived to collect his things, Ms. Hensley was there waiting by the board. She looked tired, not the bright, confident professor from before. "I didn't mean to humiliate you," she said quietly. "It was just a joke." Marcus looked at her, calm as ever. "A joke," he repeated. "It only feels like one when you're not the punchline." Her eyes lowered. For a moment neither spoke. Then she asked, "How did you even know the solution?" He picked up the marker again. "Because I've been teaching myself. Every night. Every problem left behind by people who never thought I was watching." He began writing once more. Not the same equation, but something even more complex. Step by step, he explained his reasoning, his voice steady but charged with emotion. By the time he finished, Miss Hensley had tears in her eyes. He wasn't just solving math. He was solving an injustice, quietly, one equation at a time. As he set the marker down, the door opened. Behind them stood a group of students, phones recording, faces filled with awe. Someone whispered, "He's doing it again." This time no one laughed. The truth was undeniable now. The janitor everyone ignored had just proven he didn't need a title to be a teacher. And as the cameras flashed, Ms. Hensley finally said the words she should have said from the start. "You're extraordinary, Marcus." He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "Just seen it for once." The video of Marcus solving the equations spread faster than anyone expected. Within days, millions had seen it. Headlines called him the janitor genius. But for Marcus, the real victory wasn't fame. It was finally being seen for who he was, not the uniform he wore. The university, under pressure, offered him a scholarship and an assistant position in the math department. It was a gesture that looked good on paper, but Marcus knew what it truly meant. They weren't rewarding him. They were repairing their image. Still, he accepted, not for them, but for every unseen person like him who had ever been underestimated. Weeks passed. The same halls he once cleaned now echoed with his lectures. Students who once laughed now took notes as he taught the same equation that started it all, the one that revealed more about humanity than mathematics. One afternoon, Ms. Hensley visited his new class. She sat quietly in the back listening. When the lecture ended, she approached him and said, "You taught me more than any textbook ever could." Marcus smiled, a tired, genuine smile. "Then I guess we both learned something." Outside, a janitor pushed his cart past the window, just as invisible as Marcus once was. For a moment, Marcus watched him, eyes soft with recognition, because this story was never just about solving an equation. It was about solving a mindset, one that measures worth by labels instead of ability, by color instead of character. Marcus didn't need applause or headlines. He just needed the world to understand one simple truth. Brilliance has no uniform, and maybe, just maybe, the next time someone underestimates a janitor, they'll remember him. The man who solved the impossible and proved that respect is the real equation we've yet to master.